We have a question that I think an awful lot of parents can relate to today. Um, the question is, my teenager is on their phone constantly, and I'm convinced it's making their anxiety worse. But every time I try to limit it, it turns into a massive row. Help. So I think a lot of us can relate to that. A lot of parents of teenagers can relate to that. It's yeah, it's a huge problem. It simply is a huge problem, and I don't envy you. But there's kind of two parts to this questions that I want to talk about. And the first one is the questioner right that it's the anxiety that's making the phone worse? I think chances are that it is. Chances are very high, but obviously I don't know your specific circumstances, and there are other things in life that can make you anxious. But if you've noticed a correlation, chances are that you are right. A social psychologist called Jonathan Haidt, who has been studying this for years, published research showing that from around 2012, which is when smartphones became widespread and Instagram started advertising directly to teenagers, rates of anxiety and depression in teenage girls went through the roof. Not some gentle upward trend, a sharp, really sharp rise. Before that, it had been broadly stable. So this steep and sustained rise is what we are seeing now, and the effect is worse for girls than for boys. For moving from a kind of moderate to heavy social media use is associated with a doubling of anxiety and depression in boys. For girls, it's triple. And why would that be specifically for girls? I think it's because what social media does to teenage girls is particularly brutal. You know, it puts her body, her social status, the size of her friendship group, the number of people who approve of her on permanent public display, measurable in likes and comments every single hour of the day, at the exact developmental moment when she's most uncertain about all of those things. So we know that the commercial world has been reaching further and further down into childhood to sell girls impossible standards. I mean, I don't know if any of you are as old as me and remember when Marks and Sparks started selling padded bras for young girls, and there was a big backlash, and rightly so. And that was the physical world doing what social media does every day digitally, telling girls that their natural body is not enough, that they need to be more, look better, perform more before they've even finished growing. So yeah, you're right. The phone, and specifically the social media on the phone, is likely what is making your daughter anxious. And that's not paranoia. That's documented, measurable public health crisis, in my opinion. Now, so this is where my 7 pillars of empowered parenting comes in, because understanding the problem is only the beginning. The question is what you do about it. So 4 of those pillars are relevant to this question. The first is pillar 1, emotions education, the most important one. So we need to understand what anxiety actually is before we can help. So your teenager's anxiety is not random. It is a nervous system on high alert all the time. And social media is designed by very clever, very well-paid people to keep the nervous system activated. The notifications, the pings, the rings, the dings, the comparisons, the fear of missing out, the constant checking, that's on purpose, engineered to be addictive. So it's not a willpower question on behalf of your child. You haven't got a particularly weak child who has no willpower. You know, this is the same psychological machinery that makes gambling addictive applied to a device in your child's pocket. Now, you know, we wouldn't let our children eat candy floss for every meal every day simply because they wanted to. We know their developing bodies need lots, need lots of nutrition other than sugar. They probably don't even need sugar, do they? The same is true of these developing minds. They need real connection, real rest, real experience, real relationships. And the phone gives them a simulation of all of those things, just convincing enough to keep them reaching for it, not quite enough to actually nourish them. And that gap, that chronic low level undernourishment, is what feeds her anxiety. So the second pillar is pillar 4 of the Wild Ride of Adolescence. Sorry, the pillar 4 of the Empowered Parenting program, and it is the Wild Ride of Adolescence, which is where we look at the teenage brain and the incredible, most significant remodeling a brain goes through at that age. Prefrontal cortex, the part that manages impulse control and long-term thinking, is literally not wired in, not finished, which means that your teenager genuinely cannot regulate their phone use in the way that adults theoretically can. But I bet you've noticed for yourself that you reach for it quite quickly when you're bored too. So they are not choosing to be addicted. Their brain is not yet equipped to choose otherwise without significant support. And I think for you to understand that, has to change the way you come at this problem. Because what I want you to see is you're not fighting a naughty child. You haven't failed. Your child isn't being bad and naughty and non-compliant. You are a parent whose job is to lead a child whose brain is not yet able to lead itself on this particular issue. That's your job, that's on you, and that's what leadership looks like here. And so the third pillar of the empowered parenting is pillar 6, boundaries that build trust. And this is where I want to be really quite direct with you, because I think this is where a lot of parents get stuck. If setting a limit, a boundary on your teenager's phone turns into a massive row every single time, that is telling you something. It's not telling you that the boundary is wrong. It's telling you that you need to get better at holding it. A boundary that collapses under that pressure is not a boundary. It's a suggestion. And teenagers, adolescents, whose entire developmental task for 7 years is to test where the edges are, they're going to push. They're going to push a suggestion until it gives way every single time. Not because they're naughty or bad. They're doing exactly what adolescence requires them to. They are checking, is there a structure here? Is there actually somebody leading, or is this negotiable? So what I want you to hear is, you pay for the Wi-Fi, you pay for the device, you are the adult in the house, and the phone is not a human right. Sleep is. Health is. Your child's developing brain is. And you have every legitimate authority to set the terms under which technology is used under your roof. And the other side of that is, that does not mean coming in hot and confiscating it in rage and ripping, the PlayStation out of the wall. That just doesn't work. This is where you have to be strategic. It means deciding with if there's another parent in the household, but also letting your teenager know that from tomorrow or whatever, this is what's going to happen very clearly, very calmly. What are the rules? And communicating them without drama and holding them without negotiation. So something along, we charge phones downstairs at 9:30 every night. That's not a discussion, it's a family rule. It's about your sleep and your health, and those are my responsibility while you're living here. So put it onto the values of sleep and health, or the values of safety. It could also come under, I don't want you to access things that are dangerous. Short, clear, calm, non-negotiable. And then when it will be tested, because it will be, You hold it. You don't explain yourself for 40 minutes. You do not get drawn into any arguments about whether Instagram is actually bad. You hold the line. And then this brings us then to the last of the 7 pillars, which is pillar 2, which is about resourcing yourself first. Because if you're not resourced, you can't hold that line. That's why it turns into a massive row every time. You know, when it escalates into something that you're, you know, that you're not happy about, which I guess you're not for 2 reasons. You put in that question because of the worry about the anxiety, but also because the rowing is not nice. And what typically happens for parents is that they lose the plot, they scream and shout, they weaponize their anger, and then afterwards, you know, the guilt kicks in, or you cave in, or sometimes they just know how to push your buttons in ways that you don't even understand how they do it, but you will either blow up or melt down, and then the boundary will collapse. And that's not because you're a bad parent. It's because you're a human running on empty, trying to lead from a place of depletion, and I get it. And I think it's so hard to be a parent these days. And so I just really want to encourage you to put yourself first, to nourish yourself, give yourself what you need so you can hold that line. And obviously, you know, that is the work that I do with parents. And it's not just, you know, here's a script, follow that, because that doesn't exist. It's about what happens to you when your teenager rages back at you. What old story gets activated? Where does the guilt come from? Because when you clear that out of your system, then it becomes really easy to hold that boundary. You know, you probably know some families where it's just not a problem. They have held it from day one. There's no effort, you're not white knuckling, it's just easy. And that's because it's coming from a settled place in you instead of a reactive one. So I just want to summarize by being practical. You are right that phone use is contributing to anxiety. It's simply a fact. So set one clear non-negotiable rule. And if I were you, I would start with sleep, because sleep is so important for anxiety, for mental health, for everything. Phones out of the bedroom at a consistent time every night. Pick that hill and stand on it. Do not set that rule in the middle of a row. Set it when things are calm, communicate it, and from then on in, that's the rule. And when it's challenged, don't argue. Don't engage with the argument. Don't give oxygen to that argument. And if it blows up into something that feels out of control, step away. Go somewhere and do your breathing, your calming, whatever your method to calm yourself down. And if that doesn't work for you, get some support. Come and find me. There'll be a link to my free Way Forward consultation in the comment. And just to make you feel better about it, I actually was on our local Saffron Walden mummy group. Used to be called Yummy Mummies, but that's sort of gone by the wayside. I think people took the mickey out of it, but I think we're still Yummy Mummies. And somebody had put this similar question in, which made me smile that we were both doing it at the same time. And the supportive comments in that group from parents that had gone cold, from mums that had gone cold turkey on this, set the rule, suffered for a couple of days of kind of bad behaviour and kicking up and really getting stroppy, but had held the line and stuck to their guns, were just saying, you know, like 2 weeks later, it's a whole different household. Everybody's happier, calmer, more creative. So my children are in their 30s now, and I doubt very much that they'll listen to this. If they do, this will make them cringe. But when they complained to me that they were bored, I would just say, good. You'll think of something to do in a minute then. Just allow yourself to be bored. Because that is actually where the creativity, and they're amazingly creative children, where that comes in. And to make your life easier, you might want to get some creative stuff, you know, keep all those bits of cardboard from Amazon so that their capacity to be bored is expanded. And I think we could do with that a little bit of that for ourselves as well, because I have to admit, that phone is addictive. It's terrifying. So mind how you use your phone as well. I know we all have to use it for various admin bits, but I would say walk the talk, model what you want to see in them. So if you need to do admin bits, do that when they're not there. So that's it for my live today. If there's any questions, do let me know in the comments, and we'll be back in 2 weeks. And email me any question, or DM me any questions, probably easier. DM me your questions and I look forward to answering them. So have a brilliant rest of the day, and good luck with it. You have to. I just simply think you have to limit the use of it. Take care. Bye.